You hear my cat? She's very needy in the mornings. I don't know. Don't buy a cat or don't get a cat, period. So today, anti-aging series number 3, and it's on something I call ICL. So this is not something I invented. It's what one of my mentors talks about at length, and all my diet's going to focus on this. It's insulin-controlled living, right? Having control of your insulin, not letting your insulin control you. So if you're a diabetic, pre-diabetic, obviously this is super important for you. But ahead of the game, dog people, smart move, Steven. Dogs are a lot more fun. My wife kind of tricked me into the cat. We were going to foster it for a couple weeks. It had a broken leg, and of course everyone falls in love with it. So here we are 4 or 5 years later. Cats. All right, so today, ICL, insulin-controlled living, which essentially means manipulating your carb intake so you can handle them better, right? Absorb them into the muscle cells, not the fat cells, ideally. So a lot of this stuff is going to be repetitive with what I preach, but really the dietary changes are most important, right? Going through periods of the day where you don't have any carbs, keeping insulin levels dormant. They're never going to be completely flat. And then introducing them when you're most sensitive to them after a hard workout, right? Cardio session, that type of thing. So I will write that out here just so it's clear. Right. So step 1, besides the diet, right? The diet's going to be your big key, is keeping protein high, carbs moderate, and fats moderate. Because really, I'm getting sidetracked here, but low fat, low carb doesn't really matter as long as your total calories are low enough to lose weight and your protein is high enough to maintain muscle while you diet. Those are the 2 variables. There was a huge study that just released. They had a bunch of people on low carb diets, a bunch of people on low fat diets, and they got pretty much the same results just because they kept their calories controlled and ate protein. So whatever your preference is in terms of that, if you really like fatty foods, you can go that route, or typically people like carbs, so managing carbs. It's just the timing that matters. So the first one is to build as much muscle as possible, right? Okay. These are 5 tips, by the way. We got to write them out as we go. But build muscle. The more muscle you have, the more carbs you can handle, right? They're stored in your muscle cells. So that's a big one. Typically 4 days a week is the sweet spot. If you're just getting started, body weight 3 times a week is going to do you wonders. So the programs I write into the app are designed for this. Optimal being each muscle group gets hit twice a week. You're going to be building muscle optimally in that scenario. Of course, you want to focus on fat loss if that's where you need to go first. But typically, the more fat you have, the more muscle you can potentially gain while you're trying to lose fat, as long as protein is high and you're weight training. So that's number 1 of the insulin-controlled living lifestyle. Number 2 is, this virus thing keeps popping up. Number 2. So you may have heard of the slow carb diet. This is the same general thing. Glycemic index doesn't really matter anymore, but this is more of those quality carbs, right? Your oatmeal, your rice, sometimes whole wheat stuff. Anything with a lot of fiber is going to help you out here. And there's no magic to it. It just fills you up better than, straight sugar does. So the other caveat with this is to time your intake to times when you're most active, right? So after workout is when you're going to typically have your biggest meal. I like to backload carbs into the evening just so I go to bed on a full stomach. Don't get woken up by adrenaline halfway through the night because I was fasting too much before bed. And that's just, it sets up better for most people's lifestyles to have a bigger dinner at home with the family and kind of eat light throughout the day to compensate for that. All right. So this one's another common theme here is sleep. Less than optimal sleep, unless you're Donald Trump, apparently. He sleeps 4 hours a night. That might explain his diet and his weight gain. With sleep, it can affect every hormone in your body including insulin, all your hunger hormones, ghrelin, all this stuff gets out of whack when you don't sleep properly. Your body kind of goes into a state of paranoia and throws everything for a loop. So making sure you're getting that number. Everyone, it's a little different. Typically, it's 6.5 up to 9 hours a night that you'll probably need. You'll know what you need, right? When you're not grumpy the next day, you're not getting cravings for sugar. So trying to emphasize that is a big key as well. Our questions, obviously, drop them below, and I should be able to see them. So this is one, people think I'm anti-cardio. In fact, I'm pro-cardio with the caveat, right? It's the type of cardio that's not going to affect your recovery from weight training. So that's minimal amount of intervals, mostly stuff on an empty stomach. That's just steady state, right? Walking with the dog, getting on a stationary bike for a half hour while you watch Netflix, that type of thing. That's the best type of cardio I find, and it can help with your weight loss, but also your insulin sensitivity, right? That's related to insulin-controlled living, all right? And the last one is something a little off the wall you may not have heard of, but GBAS. So that's glucose disposal agents, a fancy word for supplements that help you absorb and digest carbs. So this may require a conversation with your doctor. Metformin is obviously the prescription option. That's the most highly regarded. Certainly if you're a diabetic, that's the route to go. There's some profound anti-aging life extension properties with that. I've never used it myself, so I can't speak to it on that level, but some of my mentors praise it. It seems like it's a miracle drug in a lot of ways, and it helps you kind of manage your diet, lowers your hunger. So that's a good one. I'm also a fan of curcumin for more reasons than this. It's not huge in terms of insulin sensitivity, but joint health, inflammation, which we're talking about next week, that's one of my go-to supplements. If you got a little extra cash, you can get that for $1 a day if you go to Costco. And the last one, cinnamon, right? Just that can actually lower your blood sugar post-meal if you have cinnamon with your meal. So obviously you're not going to sprinkle cinnamon on a steak, but where it fits, try to use it. And berberine is the one that's similar to metformin that you don't have to go through a doctor to get. And that one I've used in spurts, and it definitely lowers your blood sugar. It can be potent, so using the lowest possible dose. Mostly you don't bother with number 5 here, but when you're hard dieting, you're trying to get every ounce of fat lost, there may be a time and place. All right, so the five recaps: build as much muscle as possible. That gives you more opportunities to eat more carbs. You absorb them better. Eat low GI carbs most of the time, right? Healthy stuff. And time your intake to your activity levels. More carbs when you're more active. Manage your sleep. It goes without saying. Do cardio apart from your weight training a few times a week at least to start. And then use those glucose disposal agents. All right, so that was anti-aging. Number 3 is managing insulin. Because if your insulin gets out of control, well, you gain weight for one, and you start to look older eventually. So we don't want that. Anti-aging is what we're after. So do these 5 things, and you'll be on your way. I've got a couple diet critiques to do this weekend. Any questions, drop them below. I'll get to them later on. Thanks, guys.